7 minutes after 10 o'clock. Good morning to you. Leston Paul, my friend, how are you? Good to have you inside of here this morning.
Yeah, man, it's good to be on 107.7 this early Sunday morning.
Man, that's a lot of music you have thrown down. Throughout the years, you have thrown down music that folks, every time they hear it, they're going to say, he did that, he did that, he did that. I mean, that's what it sounds like after a while. Did he do all of that? Leston Paul, you began your musical journey, what was age 8? You were a drummer and a percussionist. But just before we go into Leston Paul, some of the other big songs that you've written, I mean, I just featured a number of tracks coming out of, Arrow, of course, which was the biggest selling soca song ever, which is Hot, Hot, Hot. I just went into Rootsman, Rock Me, Rock Me. I just went into all of my man, Baron. And that's just a small sample of what you have done.
Yeah. You have Kitsch, you have Johnny King, you have Plain Clothes, you have Ross Eiley, you have Byron Lee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You could go on and on.
Yeah, because the question remains, who have you not worked with? Because that's really what it comes down to. Not only have you worked with Merchant, you've worked here in Trinidad as well as you've worked throughout the Caribbean. You've worked in New York, you've worked all over the world. So Leston Paul, it's really a pleasure to have you here. Like I said, we've got two other titans coming in different spheres to join you. And when they do, we'll be happy to do that. Let's talk about you now. And now I will take that journey. Age 8, you started as a drummer and a percussionist. Guys, it is carnival time. That's why we're staying in for the whole 2 hours. We're talking about the cultural side of this, okay? So tell me about you. Starting as a drummer, what you were inspired by who? Was it, I believe I heard it was Willard Paul of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Band. Tell me about that.
Yeah, with the Willard Paul from the police band. He had a band, Tropical Ambassadors. Mm-hmm. That was the first gig that I ever did back in the day, because when I left school, I couldn't really, while I was at school, a lot of people was asking me to play with them, and I couldn't really do it because of the strict parenthood, so they allowed me to do that gig with Willard Band. Because he wasn't the police band and stuff, and I guess that was the beginning of the whole journey.
But you were a percussionist. You were primarily at that time a percussionist, and you graduated into the keyboard. You moved from a drummer kind of thing, and you got onto the keyboard. How did that transition take place, by the way?
My grandfather actually had a piano, and sometimes when I go to visit him, I would be playing and stuff, and he eventually gave me one of the pianos that he had, an acoustic piano. Because he used to repair them. He used to fix pianos and guitars and stuff. So I started to do the keyboard thing from there.
Right, so let's talk about how you got into the arranging thing, because we're coming to the evolution of the music and so on. It is not just only a bio kind of look. We're going to get into all of the business. Your first artist that you got into working will be after you got into arranging. How did you get into arranging?
Well, that was very interesting. I was really a composer. I was an arranger, and I wanted to be a renowned composer, composing songs and stuff, and I was doing a little thing at Kikumba Music Publishing Company on Frederick Street, where Earl Rodney
That's right.
used to visit. And Earl, he took me under his wings in terms of giving me ideas and stuff on how the music business operates.
Now, just to be very clear here, when we talk about Earl Rodney, among the many other things he was involved in, Earl was heavily involved with the pan.
The pan, yeah.
All right. So you got your early schooling. From Earl Rodney. Okay, go ahead.
And he told me if I don't want to starve, I should pursue being an arranger. So I took his advice, because I always listen to a lot of folks who are more experienced than me in the business. So, that led me on to Willard Paul in the police band.
That's how that transition took place.
Took place.
Okay. And the first time you got to a recording studio was when?
That was actually with Umbala had produced.
George Umbala.
Right,
Yes.
he had produced an album for Explainer.
Mm-hmm.
And Earl Rodney brought me into the studio to do the keyboards on that album.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first studio experience, but it wasn't for arranging, it was for playing.
Oh, okay. You went in as an instrumentalist, as a
yeah,
musician,
as a musician.
to accompany, right?
Mm.
Give me let's get to the arranging part, man. I'm trying to get up there. Take me up there. How did you get into the arranging thing?
Well, the arranging thing, when I did the gig with Willard,
Mm-hmm.
he gave me some books and stuff to read. And he had a band, I was playing in the band, and I started to arrange for the band.
Mm-hmm.
We will do gigs and stuff, and that is how everything came about. The first artist I think I arranged for in the studio was a track with Brother Mudada.
Mm.
It was a singer.
It was a signal for Modado, right?
Yeah.
All right. So at what point you decided, listen, I like, because Modado was into what was called the conventional type of calypso.
Yeah.
Modado was not into a soca thing. Modado was into the calypso thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about at what point you saw the need. Now, I know Ed Watson got together with Raz Shorty. I understand these guys were doing good. I understand there was a guy named Pelham Goddard doing a little thing with Maestro. And, folks were doing stuff. But wait till Pelham gets in here to talk about that. At what point did you start seeing the need to turn into that new idiom or manifestation of the art form, move it away from the traditional and start putting that kind of soca thing in there?
Well, music is vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Although we do theory and stuff, that's just the basic in music. There's a spiritual and more approach that you take in terms of doing music, because you could have all the theoretical experience, knowing the basic and the notes and where they place and stuff, but actually the vibes, that is something that I got from Ed Watson, because I played with him a carnival season, and I played with him, and I got some real good pointers.
Ed is one of those unsung heroes because, Ed has done a lot of good music. Folks like yourself and my next guest is, you guys are familiar with the power of Ed Watson.
Yeah.
Ed was there, and on the one hand, the professor was stroking Professor Decoto, and on the other side, you had Ed working hard, together with other people, of course, like Macintosh and so on, Frankie and stuff, but we gonna get there. All right, so Ed, you were clearly influenced by him.
Clearly influenced by him, because I remember there was a fete that we played in. I think it was somewhere in Europe. That there was a big fete there. I think they had somebody died. I think there during that time also. It had a stampede or something like that.
Mm.
And that era there, that year particularly, Ed was on a high because he had Errol Ashe singing with him.
Ashe, yes.
And he had some real nice hits. So I learned a lot from him, like the vibes of the bass line and the brass and stuff.
And these vibes in the bass line were the vibes of the conventional form. Of course, there's a standard way of learning how to play the music. But I meant as far as the curve turning of the culture, was that in that bass you referred to that you learned from Ed, that whole changing of the direction of the sound of the art form? Is that what you're talking about, that you learned from him?
Yeah, he had a particular way that he used to do his phrasing, and his arrangement was really, because remember he worked with Raz Shorty also. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So at that time, the music was really influencing a lot of people around the Caribbean, and Ed was hot in terms of the percussion, the drum beat, and syncing the drum beat with the bass. So I learned, I pick up a lot of points from Ed Watson.
All right. My guest, in case you just locked in, is Leston Paul. I mentioned that we've got Titans in here this morning, and Leston Paul, whether it be the Mighty Duke, whether it be Arrow, whether it be Baron, he's worked with all of them. We're talking about Merchant, we're talking about Roots Band, Lord Kitchener, everybody. I want to talk about that Lord Kitchener thing too. You saw that gentleman who just walked in the door there? You see that? I think you recognize him. When did you guys first meet, by the way, before I bring him on the microphone? When did you guys first meet? And the one who saw the Skylab coming down, the one who said that he's the one who dug up the roots.
I think the first time I met him was at Cade Studio.
Cade Studios. Oh, yeah, Cade Studio was the studio at one time. I mean, that was the happening studio, right? That was the days of the owner of this network, his father, Ellis was down there. Yeah, and they were making a whole lot of music. Oh, by the way, guys, this morning we've got good folks in here too. I've got a young man who is the what should I tell him who he is? Yeah, J&W, man. It's good to see you, my brother. We talk about that. Mr. Pelham Goddard, he's gonna come and join us, and we're gonna talk about the Charlie's Roots whole thing, and then we're gonna take his moorings and put it together with Leston's, because they were kind of like the Young Turks, you know what I'm saying? Those who brought about that revolution, even though, as Pelham probably will tell us, he was there just before you took the curb.
Of course, yeah.
I'm trying to be nice with the age. I said he was there just before. Agree with me, just before. Don't make it sound like, oh yeah, he was here a long time before.